Why critical thinking serves humanity more than ideology. Critical thinking is the heart of the intellectual structure that puts the quest for objective truth and rigorous analysis above the dogmatic confines of ready-made ideological belief systems. Critical thinking offers a safeguard for the individual against the dangers of bias and misinformation by creating a climate in which ideas are subjected to critical evaluation instead of reflexive acceptance. Ideologies often serve as a handy shorthand for making sense of the world, but frequently impose a narrow lens that discourages deeper inquiry. Instead, the development of a critical mindset trains people to traverse an ever more complex information landscape with clarity, precision, and an unwavering devotion to evidence-based reasoning. Analytical skepticism and its cognitive benefits. Critical thinking is a paradigm shift in the way you engage with the world, shifting the focus from validation to investigation. Ideology is by nature a phenomenon of motivated reasoning, where the aim is to justify a set of core beliefs irrespective of external contradictions. Critical thinking, however, requires a conscious break from this pattern, encouraging the observer to recognize their own cognitive blind spots. Critical thinkers build a buffer to the effects of confirmation bias by looking at the foundation of their own assumptions. Objective evaluation, judging claims, involves removing emotional language and acknowledging the underlying logic or evidence presented. It enables people to evaluate the merits of an argument on its own terms, rather than who is making the argument or how politically resonant the argument might be. Combating manipulation. In a time of rapid information flow, the ability to tell fact from spin is a survival skill. Critical thinkers are less likely to fall for logical fallacies or fear-based messaging that is often used in dogmatic appeals. Intellectual humility. The core process is the realization that one's present knowledge can be changed in the face of new evidence. This humility keeps us from getting too attached to any one ideological worldview and becoming stagnant, empowering independence and flexibility. One of the biggest disadvantages of subscribing to an extreme ideology is the tendency to make package deals where you feel you have to take a whole set of policies or social values because you belong to a certain group. This strict adherence to a binary framework often hides the complexities of difficult issues. Critical thinking is a corrective force in the sense that each problem is considered a separate study object that needs to be analyzed and solved based on evidence. Independent judgment. The critical thinker weighs the context, variables, and potential consequences of each challenge separately rather than following the party line or a predetermined set of values. Innovative problem-solving critical thinkers are better able to think outside of the box because they are not confined to the predetermined solutions of a limited ideology. They will try out unconventional ideas where the evidence indicates that it will work. Dynamic response, the world is changing, a fact we see every day as of April 30th, 2026, and the ability to adapt is essential. Ideology often requires followers to disregard or deny inconvenient facts. Critical thinking encourages inclusion of new data so that one's understanding can be improved and the right strategies are adopted. The role of rationality in healthy democracy. A functioning society is largely defined by citizens who can communicate across ideological divides. When discourse is wholly taken over by rigid belief systems, compromise is impossible because each side sees the other through a lens of hostility or irreconcilable conflict. Critical thinking is the bridge to common ground because it encourages people to engage with different perspectives, not as threats, but as data points to be understood and evaluated. Less emotion ideologies use people's feelings to get them to follow. Critical thinking keeps things at a distance so people can talk about things rationally. The critical thinker values logic over emotion, thus reducing the volatility that often drives social polarization. Empathetic analysis, understanding another perspective, does not mean that you agree with it, but the critical thinker can analyze why someone else holds a particular view, which is the first step toward effective dialogue and the building of consensus. Democratic engagement, a healthy democracy depends on informed participation. With the skills to identify propaganda and legitimate analysis, citizens are better able to hold institutions accountable and make decisions that serve the collective good, steering clear of the path of blind faith. To move from being a passive recipient of ideological narratives to being an active and critical participant is a step towards intellectual autonomy. People often find comfort in the security of a group identity, but this comfort is often a facade that conceals a lack of real understanding. When you walk the path of critical inquiry, you own your cognitive processes, and your conclusions are the result of your own diligent work, not the work of somebody you follow, a movement or a social media trend. Critical thinking requires a discipline of mind that is a constant practice. It's an ongoing process of hypothesizing, researching, testing, and revising. This is necessarily a more difficult process than subscribing to an already existing ideology which has answers to all questions. But the reward for this effort is a life lived more authentically, with a much higher degree of immunity to the influence of those who seek to manipulate public opinion for their own ends. To sum up, ideology should give way to critical thinking for the sake of individual growth and societal good. The choice to question, analyze, and remain open to evidence protects us from the dangers of closed-mindedness and dogmatism. It is the basis for a society of rational discourse. We can meet the many-faceted challenges of our time with creativity and depth. Living these principles means being masters of our own minds in a rapidly changing world, leading to a more informed, resilient, and collaborative human experience.